Hey y'all, welcome to another episode of the Late Night Vision Show. This is episode 273. And before we get into talking about exactly what this show is about, I want to invite you to go, if you haven't already, please go and subscribe. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you hit that subscribe button because that's really the only way that you're going to find out the shows are released. YouTube is not great about putting these types of show hunting related content into suggested videos. So make sure you go subscribe there. That way you make sure you see every episode, don't miss anything. Also, if you are looking to purchase a brand new night vision or thermal optic, please give us a call at Outdoor Legacy. It's at Outdoor Legacy, 877-350-1818, outdoorlegacy.com. We've done a lot of content shows lately, but our show probably best known for our thermal and night vision reviews. A lot of people go to the videos to check out the scopes, to see if it's something they're interested in, but to know for sure that it's something that's going to be right for you. It does help to talk to somebody, and that's what we offer at Outdoor Legacy, 877-350-1818, outdoorlegacy.com. Jason, the owner of Outdoor Legacy, what's up, man?
Man, not much. That was a good promo. We would love to have your business. So absolutely, if you're looking for that thermal or night vision scope and want to make the purchase from us, give us a call. Guys, we got a show today. I'm going to jump right into it because we've got a lot to talk about. And it's going to be on the subject of thermal clip-ons, just clip-ons in general. Now, I want to lay a few things out about this, but first, let me say, we did a show about this, and Hans and I were talking. We get a lot of questions about it, and I said, "You think we ought to do a revisit the topic of clip-ons?" And Hans said, "Man," he said, "we could." He said, "We did a show on it. It wasn't that long ago." And I said, "How long do you think?" And he goes, "I don't know, maybe a year, maybe a year and a half ago." So I look back, and it's been over 5 years since we did it. It was,
That's crazy.
it was March of 2020 on episode 96
Yeah.
of this podcast. So here we are, 273 episodes. So I guess that's almost 200 episodes
It
later.
seems,
About
yeah, it
yeah,
seems like a lot sooner, but I swear you and I talk about clip-ons. It
we
seems
do.
like on a daily basis when it comes to people calling in. It's really,
That's right.
it's one of these topics that's never really died out. It's always
Sure.
a conversation starter in some of the forums. A lot of people have questions about clip-ons, and we want to help answer that today and really kind of put some myths to bed. Jason, is
Yeah.
what we're going to
Well,
try to
well, Hans,
tackle
let's do
today.
this before we jump in. Why don't, just because there may be some people watching this that say, I don't know exactly what a clip on is. Why don't you just briefly give some sort of an explanation of what that is for everybody that's watching, just in case they don't know?
Yeah, I had to reach back here on my table of thermal.
Uh oh.
Yeah, so there's a little bit of confusion with of what a definition of a clip-on or what a clip-on is. I get a lot of guys that call in and say, "Yeah, I want a clip-on scope." What they actually mean is something like this. Jason, you can't see. I'm holding a Knockpix Slim, very small scope that you could take on and off. It's got a return to zero quick release mount. A lot of people think a clip-on, or when they say clip-on, they're actually meaning a dedicated scope that you can take on and off, and what they say clip on, take on and
Yeah.
off, and it returns to zero. That is not what, for the sake of the conversation today, we are not talking about a dedicated thermal scope that you can clip on or off or take on and off. We're talking about an actual clip-on thermal in the industry. What we mean is a thermal that's used in conjunction with a daytime scope. So you see, a thermal in front of a regular daytime optic where you're looking through the daytime optic, and that a daytime optic is looking through a thermal. That is the clip-on that we're talking about. Something like this, a dedicated scope that can be clipped on, not really the same thing at all. I mean, you're
Yep.
using that primarily, but that's it. It's just those are some confusing things because people kind of use that word clip on and intermingle it back and forth to two different types of products.
Sure. So, good explanation. I want to jump in and just kind of go over some basics here on the front before we kind of get into these myths. And I want to explain some of this up front. One of the questions is, has anything really changed with thermal clip-ons, in the last 5 years since we recorded that? Short answer is no. They really have not. Nothing has really changed. The technology is the same. Also, there's just going to be a whole bunch of caveats. I'm just going to kind of throw these things out. There are some extremely high-end clip-on systems out there that are very, very expensive. We're talking about things that maybe 5 digits and up. When you get into that kind of price range, these are more of what you're going to see law enforcement, military grade type stuff. That's not what we're talking about today. There are some exceptions to these rules that we're throwing out for some of these really high-end systems. We're talking
My
about
my
consumer
brain can
grade.
only comprehend 4 digits. So when you said
Oh, I'm
five
sorry.
digits,
Okay,
like
so let's just say 10,000 and up. How
that
about
to me
that?
is
So,
like the
yeah,
Department of Defense is trying to sell me a thermal or something.
yeah. So when you get into this really higher end stuff, there are some different rules that are going to apply. We're not talking about that. Those are not made by manufacturers that are involved in the hunting industry for hunters. We're talking about the name brands that in the hunting world selling optics that would be generally used for hunting. So that's kind of again, we're not talking about those. So don't leave comments and say, well, what about this one? And you're talking about something really way high end. That's not it. Second thing is that there there are exceptions to the rule on. Well, let me back up before I say that. We'll just lay this out. We are not. Our position has not changed. We are not fans of clip-ons. We have tested so many different clip-ons over the years. I mean, we've been doing this for over a decade. We've tested clip-on after clip-on after clip-on, and the results are always the same. It is not what we want it to be. It's not what the person buying it wants it to be, generally speaking. And so we're not a fan. I'm just going to lay that out front. That's just the answer. I also want to say that a lot of times people will want a clip-on, or they'll be looking for one, and we kind of, we get negative on it and poo-poo it, and there's this immediate sense of, well, these guys don't sell them, so that's why they don't want me to buy one, because they don't get to make any money. To be very clear, it is true that we don't sell them, but it's because we choose not to sell them. The manufacturers that we deal with, most of them, at different times, even maybe currently, offer clip-on optics, but we don't offer them because we don't believe that they're a good value for the dollar. We don't think it's something that we can put our name behind and suggest that you spend your hard-earned money on, so we don't sell them. It has nothing to do with us making money. We would make more money if we did sell them, because there are some people looking for them. But we only want to sell things that we believe in and that we believe we can tell you this is a good value for your dollar, and this will give you the user experience that you're hoping for. Now, where I was kind of cut myself off, there are exceptions to the rule. There always is. And generally, if you ask me, is a clip-on, one of these that we're talking about in this consumer grade, is it ever good for anybody? I would say generally no. A dedicated scope will always be better. But the one guy that I might give an exception to is a guy who's got a high-end rifle. Okay, this is a custom rifle. He's got a high-end day scope. He wants to keep those together. He only wants to hunt with those, and he's not really going to hunt more than maybe 1 or 2 times a year. So this is something where kind of more of, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but it's a little more of a status symbol. It's something that he wants to be able to go show the guys, I got this high-end rifle. I'm going on this big hunt. This is my baby. I want to talk about it sitting around the campfire, so I need to take it. And that guy might want to put that clip on there because he may only go hunting 2 hours this year. He's not a real active hunter. And I think for a guy like that, maybe that's okay. He gets to use the rifle that he loves. He's not really doing this a lot. I would go on to say that that's one of the exceptions. Now, again, military, law enforcement, there's some situations there where, yes, I can definitely see where a clip-on would work for them. As again, talking about these high-end clip-ons. But that's not what we're focusing on today. So those would be the exceptions to the rule. And I just kind of wanted to lay all that out there, all the caveats up front. If you've got a clip-on and you like it, that is fantastic. Nothing wrong with that. We're not here to throw rocks at another man's dog. And the last thing I would say is you will be extremely hard pressed to find any serious night hunter who has been doing this for many years and or find any serious quality thermal dealer who has been doing this for a long time, doing a lot of hunting, who will be pushing or using thermal clip-ons. You're just not going to find that, because once you have experience and see what a dedicated scope can offer at how much better it can be, you won't mess with a clip-on. Again, there may be some random exception somewhere out there, but it's very, very rare. So jumping in, we've got a few myths that we kind of want to go over. And Hans, do you have any more caveats before we start rolling down our list?
No, I think that we're going to get to some of the things that you discussed at the very end when we talk about overall popularity,
Yeah.
where it's kind of one of those things that seems more like a more popular product than it actually is when it comes down to actually units being sold. But no, let's get into it. We got several.
Okay.
We got about 7 myths here, and
Yeah.
really the first one, Jason, a clip-on costs less money than a dedicated thermal scope. So
Yeah.
that's a big myth right there to tackle.
It is. And so here's what you get into. Very often, the people that are looking for clip-ons are new to night hunting. Okay. Again, very, very rarely are we going to have somebody that already owns a thermal scope that's been doing a lot of night hunting, and maybe even a night vision scope. They've been out there doing a lot of hunting. They say, I'm ready for a clip-on. I want a clip-on. That happens, but it's normally people who are first getting into this because, again, I don't mean this in a bad way, but they don't understand everything about it, and these optics are confusing, and that seems like a cheaper way to do it. They think, man, I don't have to buy that whole scope. I just buy the part that goes in front of my daytime scope. That's actually a myth. What you can get a dedicated, better image quality thermal scope for, so like the one that Hans held up there that you put on your rifle. You don't have any daytime scope. You look through that. We're going to call that a dedicated thermal from here on out. What you can get that for in a better quality will cost significantly less than a clip-on thermal setup. I'm just going to give you a real quick example here. I'm going to use some round numbers. And this is from one of the major thermal manufacturers that we recommend and sell. I don't want to get into models and brand names because it's just going to muddy the waters. Basically, you can buy one of their entry-level thermal scopes, which is a really good 384 resolution optic, for about $1,800. Okay, $1,900. Then, if you want to buy their same grade clip-on, you're looking at about $2,400. But wait, there's more. That is just the clip-on unit. That does not give you the couplers that you need to attach that to your daytime scope. And those couplers are going to be about $200 a piece. They've actually come down. They used to be almost $300. So if you have just 2 different optics, 2 different lens sizes, then you've got to buy 2 of those. Okay, so now you're at about $400 on top of $2,400. So you're at $2,800. If you want to actually be able to look through this, like take it off of clip-on mode per se and look through it like a handheld binocular, which you can do, is like that dedicated scope Hans held up, you need an eyepiece. Those are going to be somewhere around $175, $200. So you're at about $3,000 for a full clip-on setup versus $1,800-$1,900 for the same quality dedicated scope. And actually, we'll get into this later, you'll have a better image quality on that sub $2,000. And even if you say, well, I don't need those couplers and I don't need the eyepiece, okay, you're still at $2,400. So you're talking about $600 more. That's 30-40% more money to get something that is actually not going to be as good. And you go, why is it not as good? Well, we're going to get into that. So, Hans, roll
Yeah.
on into myth number two.
Yeah, we're going to knock these out pretty quick moving forward. So I would say the next myth is the idea that, hey, I can use this clip-on with any of one of my daytime optics. So let's say you got 3 or 4 different daytime scopes and you want to be able to switch this thing back and forth to any of these daytime scopes. Really, what we have found, what we've experienced in all of our testing, what is kind of just a known truth, is that these clip-on models are going to work best with a one power daytime optic. Well, how many of y'all out there are running a one power daytime optic to hunt at night with? That's just not. I mean, you see like tactical guys that are running a 1x daytime optic for tactical situations, but I mean, the guys that are buying thermal typically are hunters, night hunters, hog hunters, predator hunters. So many of you aren't running a one power daytime optic. Now, really, it gets anything over 2.5 power daytime optic base magnification is really, you're cropping the screen down so much on that thermal that you're not able to see the entire screen. It just really doesn't work very well at all. And even the manufacturers will say, hey, this is going to be best with a one power optic. There, like I said, we've talked about there's probably some military grade stuff out there that are different than what we saw. But if you're talking about general consumer good thermal clip-ons, really 1X is going to work best on a clip-on. Anything higher than 2.5 power, really not going to work that great. Not too many people, again, are running a one power base magnification daytime optic. Also, I want to tackle the next myth that kind of goes along in the lines with that as well, is the idea of people calling like, man, I want this clip on because I can just take it on and off and I don't have to re-zero it every time. That is the biggest idea, or the biggest idea of what convenience a clip-on is going to give you, is the ability to keep your daytime optic on, because people, I know, Jason, are very particular about high-end daytime optics. They get it on there. They don't want to take it off. I completely understand. I feel that way in some regard as well. But the idea that you can just take this clip-on module or unit and take it on and off your daytime optic without re-zeroing really is just not a reality. That kind of takes away the whole advantage of what the idea of a clip-on should be. So a clip-on thermal is not going to be perfectly realigned or re-zero or put back on without having to be re-zeroed unless it's collimated. And if it's not collimated, then it's not going, you're going to have some point of impact issues when you put it back on. Right now, I mean, Jason, as far as collimated clip-ons out there, there's just, I mean, not of the basic ones.
Not in the consumer grade, not in the
Yeah.
hunting optics. There's no collimated optics. You're going to get into that again in your high-end stuff, where yes, you can just slap it in front of any optic and you're good to go. We did, Hans, I know you did yourself. I did too. A lot of testing on a couple of the more popular clip-ons. It's been 3 or 4 or 5 years ago, and we were seeing, even at 50 yards, 1.5 to 3 inches of POI shift.
That's a lot.
And that's a lot. You start talking about 100 or a 200-yard shot, you're not hitting that animal. And so that is, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm saying, the idea, the biggest advantage that people call in and ask about with clip-ons is, hey, being able to take it off and on and not having to re-zero. That really is not a reality of the product right now, and that's the kind of the disappointing thing about it. But
Yeah,
Jason,
in a best case scenario, some of the optics are moving to where you can zero that clip on. You can move the clip on screen around until it is zeroed to your rifle. So you can, but now we're still talking about, a lot of people are concerned about, if I have a dedicated thermal scope and I take it off and I put it back on, does it return to zero? We've talked about that a lot on the show, and generally speaking, a very good mount they do. But you got two things going on. You're putting that back with that mount lining up in front of a daytime scope. It's just not as good as it sounds on paper. Moving along, going on to number 4, a lot of people, we hear this a bunch, and it's like, hey, listen, I've got this high end, you know, I got a Swaro, I got a Zeiss, I got a whatever, this high end Leupold scope. So I got amazing glass. So I'm going to put this thermal in front of it, and it's going to have this amazing image quality. Not exactly, and I'll explain why. And then people will also say, "Well, it's a thermal, and it's a 640 or it's a 384, so it's going to have the same image quality." Here's what you've got to remember. I don't care how good your scope is, how good your glass is. You're looking down a tube this long through multiple pieces of glass at a micro display screen. Okay, so that's what you're doing. You're looking at a little bitty tiny computer screen. And when I say tiny, if you were to look into a thermal scope right now, you would look in there and you go, man, this screen is huge. But a lot of the optics, and specifically these clip-ons, they have display screens that are as small as my fingernail. Okay, and so your scope is magnifying that display screen. I would suggest this. Take your scope or your binoculars and sit in your living room and go look at your TV screen. You will start to see, and again, a lot of people have got 4K TVs now. Okay, so you may not see it as much. I promise you, your little display screen is not going to be 4K. You can start seeing those individual pixels, and it looks grainy. Well, that's what you're doing. You're looking at this little display screen with magnification, and the more you magnify your daytime scope, the closer in you're zooming on that fixed screen, and the more pixelated and grainy it's going to become. And I always say this: would you rather watch your TV sitting in your living room, which would what I would say, if you're using a dedicated scope, you're looking straight in there, or would you rather watch your TV sit in your living room and your TV's on your back porch looking through your window? Because that's what you're doing. I don't care how good your scope is, you're looking down that tube through a whole bunch of glass pieces at a micro display screen. You're just not going to get that same image quality that you would get out of that same optic if you were looking through the small little eyepiece. And then again, as I'm kind of saying here, you say, well, this is a 640 high resolution clip-on optic. So that's going to be the same image quality as my buddy's, same price 640 high resolution dedicated thermal scope. And you're just not going to get that same experience from them.
So the next myth is the fact that, or the idea that people say, well, this is lightweight. I can, just hang it right there, right on the end of my daytime scope, or I can clip it on my rail in front of my daytime optic. The reality is they're not that lightweight. They do throw the rifle oddly out of balance. If you ever held one, it does seem like the rifle it changes feel to it. And so it really, I'll just say also, I don't think they look that great, I guess, aesthetically, if you want to be a little bit that way about it. But it does. They're not. I've seen some, Jason, we've tested some clip-ons that are as big as dedicated thermal scopes. Yeah. And in putting that on a rifle, like, wow, why would anybody ever put this on in front of a daytime optic? Some of them do seem smaller, the size of, your hand, but they still add enough weight on there that it does throw the rifle oddly off balance. And it just doesn't give the rifle a good natural feel, especially if you're putting that rifle in a tripod and shooting with it. Now, if you're on a lead sled, that's different, but who's hunting off a lead sled? If you're putting it in a tripod, it's going to feel a lot different in that, and you're going to have to balance the weight a little bit differently than you normally would.
Yeah, and I think a quick note is Some of these clip-ons now do have Picatinny quick detach mounts on the bottom. So if you've got an
Hmm.
AR with a rail all the way out there, you can very quickly clip it off and on. But if you're using a traditional bolt action style rifle, that is not an option. You have to use some sort of a coupler
Right.
that is going to be, again, I mentioned these earlier, you're going to have to buy these. And this is going to be something you're going to put on the front bell of your scope, and you're going to clamp that thing down on your big fancy scope, and then you're going to have to twist and lock in this clip on, taking off and on, because you don't have a rail on your barrel. And it's cumbersome, it's odd. I would, well, I guess I'm actually kind of going into, that's my next myth. I was kind
Yeah,
of following up
that
yours. I
was
didn't realize
very nice
I need to
transition,
look at my
man.
notes.
Smooth.
Yeah, look at my notes. Quick and easy to mount and remove is a myth. That's what people say. Well, I can pop it on and pop it right back off. I mean, I guess in theory, I mean, you can, but
Right.
it's not quick and easy. Like I
Right.
said, especially on these bolt guns, it's not, it's just not what you think that it's going to be. You also can get into situations where some of these optics don't have coupler options. You have
Mm-hmm.
to have a rail out front.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that
Mm-hmm.
there's no other option. You have to have the rail. You put it on the Picatinny rail. Then you run into height options,
Yeah.
or problems. Your daytime scope sits here and your thermal sits here, and you've got to try to lower the daytime scope or bring up the thermal or vice versa, and it turns into a mess, and it's
Yeah.
not ideal. And again, if you're using bolt guns or one of these scopes that has to have couplers, you have to have multiple couplers, and now you're clamping this onto the bell of your scope, and you've got to leave that there so that you can lock your clip on, back in and out.
So the last one that we're going to go over is just all of this generalized and kind of put into a package is that that these are popular optics, that they're they have
Not
good
popular.
well, the myth is that they are popular,
Oh, I'm
but yeah,
sorry. I was
yeah.
like, they're not popular. Yeah,
Yeah,
the
no,
myth
no.
is.
The myth is, yeah, they're popular, or that you can get good resale value, that kind of stuff. The reality is these are not very popular optics. There are many people, if you go to a Facebook forum and you say, which thermal clip-on should I buy, you're going to get 85-90% of people say don't buy a clip-on. We get a lot of calls and people asking about clip-ons, and we can quickly, by laying out the facts of what we've talked about, hey, you're going to spend less, get a better optic with a dedicated optic. They quickly are like, okay, well, I don't want to do that. So there's really just not that many sold. They're very popular overseas in Europe, and not because this is my own opinion. I don't think they're popular overseas in Europe because it's a great option. I think what we know is that there are laws in some of these countries where you can only use a clip-on. You cannot use or own a dedicated thermal. So they're very popular, obviously, in those areas. But here in the United States, there's just not that many sold. There are people that call uh, and say, "Man, I bought a clip-on and I watched y'all's show and I shouldn't have done it. I shouldn't have bought a clip-on. I regret it. I want a daytime optic, or I want a regular dedicated thermal optic. I don't want a clip-on anymore." Many people, even after we've talked to them and said, "Hey, this isn't something that you should look at another option, a dedicated thermal option," and they don't take that advice and they go off somewhere and buy one and then instantly regret it. So we wanted you to avoid that. Yes, the idea of having this clip-on that you can take on and off and use with any daytime optic and not have any return or point of impact issues, return to zero issues, is great. It's just that product right now in its perfect design does not exist. We wish that it did. We wish that it was a more viable option. We wish that it was a better deal. It's just not, unfortunately. So a lot of people out there that are wondering, hey, is a clip-on right for me? Hopefully you've seen all of this stuff and given you a little bit different perspective on it. Yes, that it may require a little bit of a follow-up conversation, but as far as the popularity of clip-on, it's not as popular as you may think if you go online or if you go to Facebook or whatever. It's not popular at all. There's really, the resale value on it is probably way less than a
It's
dedicated
abysmal.
thermal scope. Yeah, very, very less. But anyway, that's y'all. That's our
Yeah.
ideas on clip-ons. And you're right,
I
Jason. It
want
hasn't
to. I
changed.
got a couple final thoughts. Yeah, I got a couple final thoughts. One thing is, this is our 273rd episode of the Late Night Vision Show.
Hmm.
We have done some dumb shows. We've done some shows that weren't great. We've done some great shows. We've done some mediocre shows. Probably just a whole lot of okay shows. There's only one show that we've ever done that I straight up regret doing, and we did review a clip-on. And we made an exception for this optic because it was new. There was a lot of hype around it. We used it. We still had all these same problems with it. And we laid that out in that review, and we were honest about it. I mean, we were,
And
we
people
told
said
people,
we could.
I mean,
And people watched that review, Jason, and said, "Well, we could kind of tell you it wasn't your favorite."
yeah,
I mean, they could.
it was like,
They could
thanks, I
tell.
watched your review and now I'm not going to buy it. I mean, we didn't bash it. I mean, we
Yeah.
actually said at the time it was the best clip-on that we'd seen. But I regret doing it simply because we didn't lie. We probably killed the sale of that
Yeah, probably.
optic,
If it
but by
helps.
that review, I don't think the manufacturer was necessary. But I mean, again, we just whatever. It is what it is. We shouldn't even have done it. We did. We had there was so much demand when that
Yeah.
when that optic first came out that we felt like, well, you know what, this one is better than the rest, and maybe this is what we're going to have to do. And so I will say this specifically, not just related to that optic, but that optic, and you know, we did used to sell some clip-ons, a few here and there. You know, people want them. We wouldn't recommend them, but like, I gotta have one. All right, we'll sell it to you. The reason we don't do that at this point, we could be like one of these big box stores where we just sell everything, you know, but that's not, we only want to sell what we truly believe in. And in the 12 years that we've been doing this, I have never seen the grown man, any grown man, have this much buyer's remorse as I've seen repeatedly over the purchase of a clip-on. And it pains me to have somebody that I know spent whatever it is, $2,000, $3,000, $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 on something, and that I don't believe in, that I know there's better options, and they buy it, even if I've warned them, even if I've read these notes to them, and they go, nope, I want it, and I sell it to them, and they call back, and they don't blame me, and they say, man, you're right. You told me. Hans told me. Garrett told me. Y'all all told me, but I did it. I bought it. I bought it from you. I bought it from whoever. Man, I shouldn't have done that. And that, it pains me. I feel bad. I mean, it's a lot of money. Now, at the end of the day, a grown man makes his own decision with his own money. And you're still, you know, at the end of this day, you watch this, you go, Hans and Jason don't know anything. I know that this is what I want. It's what I'm going to get, and go for it. But it bothers me. And I have seen some major buyer's remorse. And I know we're going to wrap this show, but I'll tell this quick story. We had an older guy who had bought a couple really nice 640 thermal scopes from us, and his son bought this new particular clip-on back then, and he'd used it. His son had loaned it to him, and so he'd had some time with it, and he called me and said, Jason, I want to buy one of these. And I went down my list, and he goes, no, I've already used it. My son bought one somewhere else. I want to buy this from you. And I said, and I had it in stock, and I'm trying to tell him to not buy it. And I said, okay, but I'm telling you this. He bought it 6-8 weeks. The guy called me back, and he goes, Jason, he said, I had used this. You know, he goes, I wanted this to work. I'd played with it. He goes, now that I own it, he said, this is the biggest waste of money in my entire life. I'm nearly 70 years old. I've never spent this much money and regretted it more than this. And he said, and I don't know how to sell it, because if anybody asks me how I really like it, I've got to tell them the truth. He said, I'm writing this off as the most expensive mistake I've ever made. I'm throwing it in the case. I'm throwing it in the closet. My kids can sell it at a garage sale when I die. And I'm like,
Yes.
that hurt me. This was a nice old guy. And I just felt really, really bad about it. But again, I mean, he made the decision, and I'm not throwing that back on him, but I mean, I felt really bad for him. That's why we're doing this show.
Yeah.
Again, it's not because we couldn't sell them, not because we couldn't make money, but what we have dedicated this show to, and we've dedicated Outdoor Legacy to, is being honest with the customers, the people who are going to make their purchase from us. We want to tell them the truth. If we don't think something is good and we don't like it, or we don't think it's a value for the dollar, we don't want to sell it. And that's where we are here today. Are you the exception? You very well may be. As I started, I'm going to end. If you've got a clip-on and you like it, your buddy's got one, he likes it, whatever, I am not here to throw rocks at your dog. I'm not. If you like it, use it. It is great. I just know that what the myths that we went over here, the misconceptions, these are things that are real and that happen for the vast majority of people that own them. And we're just trying to prevent any buyer's remorse, any pain, suffering. And sometimes people don't even know when they buy one, they think it's great until they get to experience something else, a dedicated scope. Oh, wow, that's what I was missing. Sometimes you don't know what you don't know. So that's it. That's it at the end of the day. But if you still have questions, you may say, well, what about my situation? Maybe this is different. Maybe, call us. 877-350-1818, Outdoor Legacy. We would absolutely love to have your business. And what we want to do is we want to walk you through the process. Maybe you already know you don't want to clip on. You go, all right, you got me. You convinced me. I need a scope, but I still don't know what I need. I don't know. I know I want to spend $2,500. I want to spend $4,000, whatever that number is, but I don't know what's best for me. Call us at Outdoor Legacy. We will be happy to walk you through that process, figure out the exact right optic that will fit on your rifle for your scenario, for your needs, with the features you need in the price point that you have, and we will figure that out, and then we can help you with that sale and offer you support after the sale for as long as you own that optic. Guys, this is the Late Night Vision Show. Hans, you've been hearing him. Is this your first time watching? You've been hearing him talk over here. Hans is a wealth of knowledge. He's got his own YouTube channel, the HANSETX, Hans East Texas YouTube channel. Go check that out as well. He's got a lot of reviews, a lot of hunting videos and action over there. And so what we would say is, if you want to find us, obviously, as Hans said in the beginning, subscribe to this channel, the Late Night Vision Show. But if you want to find us on social medias, whether that's Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, you can search any of these: Outdoor Legacy, The Late Night Vision Show, or Hans East Texas, Hans ETX, and you will find us on any of those platforms.
Yeah, and be sure to subscribe on YouTube. And we appreciate this episode 273, the 7 myths, I guess, 7 of them. Yeah, 7 myths about thermal clip-ons. And we look forward to joining you again next week right here on the Late Night Vision Show. We will see y'all soon. Y'all take care.